I think there is a clear movement of or allocation to deep tech within funds. There are specialized deep tech funds, few. In absolute amount or percentage amount, the corpus might be less. Our report shows 7-8%. We believe it should go to 20% at steady state. Even the large funds who were largely doing e-com, fintech, SaaS, etc., are creating larger allocations every year for deep tech. So I think the funding is moving towards deep tech.
Hi, wherever you're joining me, I hope you're doing well. Welcome to India Tech Report, a platform dedicated to chronicling and supporting the growth of India's deep tech and climate tech ecosystems, with the occasional segue into other areas of tech entrepreneurship. I'm Hari Arakli, and this is my In Conversation podcast, where I bring you insights from founders, investors, industry leaders, and other stakeholders. In this episode, Ravi Jain, an investment director at TDK Ventures, joins me for a wide-ranging discussion on the current state and trajectory of India's deep tech ecosystem. Jain starts us off with a micro capsule on the long history of TDK, developing technologies for sectors spanning automotive, energy storage, and power electronics, and more recently, the strategic rationale for launching its corporate venture arm in 2019. He talks about TDK Ventures' mandate to invest in startups poised to shape emerging markets and tomorrow's standards, noting the recent expansion of the firm's India operations and a global portfolio that includes investments across sectors such as semiconductors, advanced materials, robotics, quantum technologies, AI, mobility, climate tech and clean energy, and agri-tech. Jain addresses macroeconomic drivers, including government policy, manufacturing incentives, and evolving founder ambitions that position India for accelerated growth in deep tech. He explains the sector's optimism despite talent and funding challenges, and highlights the increasing sophistication of Indian deep tech founders, their pragmatism, and the snowballing effect of policy and market maturation. He also talks about TDK Ventures' approach to hardware versus software startups, university-driven entrepreneurship, and the imperative for foundational work in AI. He shares reflections from his own career, distilling practical advice for future deep tech entrepreneurs navigating India's rapidly changing technology landscape. And first of all, thank you for doing this, Ravi, for making time for this.
My pleasure.
And I think for a more general audience, it might help if you can start us off by just a couple of minutes of background around TDK itself, as well as TDK Ventures,
Yeah.
including your presence in India as you go along.
Yeah.
And then we can continue from there.
Sure. TDK is a Japanese corporation playing in the material science domain. TDK Corporation has been inventing new technologies which span active passive components like capacitors, inductors, sensors. We have a family of sensors which are in all forms of hardware, whether it is automotive or to space. We also do a lot of work in power electronics and energy storage. And finally, magnetics, which is something that has been at the core of TDK from the beginning, right? All of these technologies go in almost all hardware that you could imagine. It is literally everywhere, making the end application better, and that's what TDK has been building year after year for the last almost 80 years. And the TDK Ventures idea flows really well from how TDK itself has grown its business and a technology acumen. The way TDK Corporation has grown really its portfolio of products, new inventions that it has done is driven by customers who are end application companies who are trying to do something new. So imagine the best EV company, the best space tech company, the best ICT company, all new age tech companies would be customers of TDK. And as they invent new things, they pose their problem statements to TDK engineers and R&D folks. And from those problem statements, TDK develops solutions. And as a result of that, the portfolio of products and technologies of TDK, the roadmap for TDK is future ready. And to formalize this, TDK Ventures does exactly the same, spots very promising technology companies who are, according to our theses, ready to change the future, may determine the future in their respective sectors. And by partnering them very early on, TDK would learn those domains and gain insights before those become the standards of tomorrow, right? So that's the basic reason to exist for TDK Ventures.
When you said magnetics, it jogged my memory, 35 years back, when we were middle school, high school students. The TDK cassette tape
Yeah,
used to be sort of the gold standard. I mean, it was,
exactly.
sought after. We all used to buy fresh TDK cassettes to record our, Michael Jackson and
Yeah,
so I think, of course, back then as kids, we had no idea that it was, sort of such a storied company. Something, of course, now as tech reporter, as I've learned more about how Japan literally reinvented itself. I mean, it's something amazing from many of these companies, the role that they've played.
yeah, absolutely. In fact, the same technology now, forms the basis of data storage, and these are archival storage. So when you do LLM trainings and so on, you have huge amount of data that is used for such models to be trained, and a lot of it is archival data which you will archive, and you don't want to. These are data which you will not do input output operations on everyday basis, right? And for such things, the technology core which was also there in these tapes, etc., have remorphed into magnetic storage, right? And that's how TDK has been kind of growing in sync with the cassette tapes to today's data center and LLM training needs.
Fair enough. How old is TDK Ventures? When did they start the Ventures unit?
This was in 2019.
Okay.
And the first fund was kind of an experimental fund, $50 million corpus. And since then, the assets under management has grown to $500 million now. 48 investments so far, several M&As, 4 unicorns. And I would say it has been fairly successful, and therefore this investment continues.
Did they have an India presence from fairly early on? When did they start operations in India, TDK Ventures?
No, so the India operations is about 2 years old, so fairly new. We are beginning to ramp up our presence, investments, activity, through the TDK Ventures India team, which is all in Bangalore. And I started about a year back.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. I'm going to circle back to that a bit more.
Sure.
And since it's 2 years old, I would imagine this year and going forward, you would be looking at a lot of your potential investee startups.
Yes.
But today we're also meeting to talk a bit about this really interesting deep tech report that you all released in partnership with K Capital.
Yeah.
Before we get into the findings itself, can you tell me a bit about why you wanted to do this report? I mean, even as a sort of general tech reporter interested in deep tech in India, one gets the sense that this year seems to be a year of a lot of change in India in terms of deep tech.
Yeah, the motivation is coming from the fact that deep tech ecosystem itself is very nascent, but the need is clearly apparent to everybody. The common man, the common citizen of the country, to the government, all of it, right? That without technology investments, we cannot continue to grow at a 8%, 9% aspirational GDP growth rate. And there are also issues of national security, etc., sovereignty, resilience, and so forth. How do we do more with less, right? We are a small community of deep tech founders and investors. It is by sharing knowledge and insights which can be beneficial to the entire ecosystem. And that was the primary motivation for us to pursue this idea of doing a deep tech report. The objectives were clear. We wanted to understand all the macro needs and trends of the country. We wanted to understand what are founders very interested and are already building within deep tech, and identify sectors where both of these factors are positive, plus there are policy tailwinds, so that it is very important to get timing right for a startup's success. And by the policy tailwinds, macro needs, enough activity in the ecosystem, these are three factors that define the why now of a startup. So we thought that by researching, producing the output for the community, it will create a mind map for any founder or any investor who is wanting to do deep tech, participate in this deep tech ecosystem. The end output is, apart from getting a sense of what the deep tech founders are feeling, what are the challenges they see, etc., it is also to give um, few sectors and the subsectoral areas where the potential is very high, the timing is right now, and so forth. And using this, the ecosystem can really build something which is consequential at the right time.
Do you see that some of these factors that you mentioned are actually coming together? I mean, at the macro level, we definitely know that there's a lot of government intention now and definitely and commitment to fair amount of money.
Yeah.
And this year again, anecdotally, several VC firms have raised new rounds or their next rounds of funds focused on deep tech and so on.
Yeah. I think there are various factors. One is the government's push is yielding results, and this is across several sectors, which are aligned to deep tech. Manufacturing aligns really well with deep tech, right? Because you need to build key capabilities in, let's say, industrial, IoT, robotics, etc. Right? So, um, manufacturing aligns really well with several areas of deep tech, and the government has been pushing for the manufacturing sector to grow, and you will see the trickle down effect of this. One factory with automation leads to many SMEs who become precision tooling providers, software providers, IoT providers, sensor providers, and so on. And when you do multiple such large factories and industry creation through incentives and so forth, it really helps. And that is how other economies also grew initially, whether it is Japan or Korea or China and so on. So that is definitely helping. The other is, if you look at the founder's psyche itself, right? The low hanging initial opportunities of digitization of various things, whether it is commerce, whether it is banking or finance, whether it is creation of new products which are web or app driven, like SaaS products and so forth. Those are steadily getting mature and taken. So what is the new exciting thing to pursue, which is a tougher, higher order difficulty or complexity problem statement, right? And as you know, the builders are always driven by challenges, right? So doing another e-com company might not be a higher order challenge. It is the same challenge that has been maturing now. So this, even the entrepreneurs are really looking to do something more, and I am seeing a phenomena of repeat entrepreneurs who have already done one venture or the other in the sectors that I just mentioned. They are now wanting to take on more difficult problems, right? Which connect with the purpose of the country, the needs of the country, and so forth, because they have had their success and learnings and so forth. And that is very nascent. It's new, but I'm seeing green shoots of it. And these things snowball into large movements. So our bet at TDK Ventures and my personal, optimism is stems from this fact that we believe that there will be a snowball effect of all this, the policy push, one factory leading to multiple SMEs contributing, and the entrepreneurial activity of founders, right? All of that snowballs into something huge, right? And the timing is great. I think the timing for now, for doing this is great at the moment.
Mm, mm. Okay. Can you now talk about sort of the high level findings that you highlighted in your report? I know that one sort of overarching theme seems to be that you found a lot of optimism even in the face of some existing challenges.
Yeah.
But walk us through the important finding.
The important findings were a couple of things. One, let me talk about the sectors that we believe are great for now, right? Given the time horizon of the next 5-10 years. So that is one core of the finding, which is you have semiconductors, you have cybersecurity, agri-tech, robotics and industrial, quantum, and so forth. And we have characterized these into three buckets, right? So one is the core foundational sectors, meaning the sectors have already been there, but technology is transforming them. The other is foundational sectors, for example, semiconductors, advanced materials. These are very foundational in nature. They impact multiple industries, right? And then there are sectors like quantum, which can help India leapfrog versus going the linear transition from higher nodes of semiconductors to very advanced nodes. It's a decadal journey, right? So instead of that, are there ways to leapfrog, right? So if you define these sectors, there are about 9 sectors that we found, which we have talked in detail in the report. And then there are the subsectors, right? So there are multiple subsectors where we believe that the timing for a new startup to get created is exactly now, right? And they should do well. So this is one of the core messages that we wanted to leave for the ecosystem. Oftentimes you come across very talented professionals who want to start up, and they ask this question: what is a good area today? I am thinking of doing something. What is a good area today? So this is one output that they could use. That okay, here are a list of things. Now you take your pick based on what your purpose drives you to. The other was to do a sense check with founders. So you're right that there is a lot of optimism. The other fact is that the optimism relates to various things. One, optimism of deep tech taking off in India. There is almost 8 on 10 rating to in response to the question on optimism or the degree of optimism of deep tech taking off over the next 5 years. So it is very near term actually, right? The second is the confidence on raising the next round. Almost 8 on 10. The rating again was 8 on 10. Most people believe they'll be able to secure financing for the next round. And remember, the cohort of founders are the ones who have already had some form of financing, whether a grant or a seed and so on. So they are on the way. They are not starting from scratch. But all the ones who are on the way, I think, see some encouragement from investors and government bodies, etc. So they know that money will be available if they continue to deliver on the milestones that they have. The third is, a pointed question on, is funding difficult or abundantly available or accessible? The split is 50-50, which I believe is a very healthy mix. It should not be so easily available and accessible that it leads to a overheating of the space itself. But it should not be so difficult that it is starving the startups for resources and delaying their milestone and so on, right? So that is these were some of the findings we thought. In terms of challenges, I would say, in terms of funding, one of the things that we came across was the lack of technical understanding amongst the investment community is one of the hindrance. And I can understand that it is a structural issue based on how the venture investing community has evolved in the country. They're not really operators turned entrepreneurs or tech people doing investments. It is more, business common sense and acumen people doing investments. So the persona is slightly different. If you contrast this with, let's say, developed economies where deep tech is very mature, like the US and so on, you will have in the investment team very specialized people who have, say, a PhD in a material science domain and so on. So this is one thing that came across as a strong response, that lack of technical understanding. And the other thing is skill shortage in India, right? So, and it is not to do as much with their ability to pay salaries and so on, competitive to MNCs. It is just absolute skill shortage, and it is, a cold start problem for India in a way, right? You have you didn't have these industries. Let's say manufacturing and so on is just taking off right now. You didn't have the tooling that goes into this. You don't have fabs, so there is obviously no fab talent here. It is just coming up. So because of the lack of industries here, you don't find the necessary skills which are directly applicable. And therefore, you will see a reliance on returning Indians and so on who have been practitioners overseas and now are coming back to pursue, their entrepreneurial journey and so forth, right? So that's also highlighted in this in our findings.
And you've spoken to several hundred founders.
Yeah.
Okay. On the point about timing being right, can you take one example of one sector or subsector and give us a sense of how you see timing being right?
So let's take the example of space, which was our very recent deep exploration, as we call it, within TDK Ventures. And if you look at it, there is a lot of democratization of satellites being launched, right? Satellite launching is now accessible. And there is a lot of innovation on how you use the satellite data for downstream applications. It's not a mature industry, but the demand is apparent. You have climate change, you have surveillance needs, you have agri-tech needs on seeing whether vegetation is growing as per plan or there are deviations. There is mining needs for rare earths and so on, right? All of which rely on, which are very efficiently done through satellite imaging. So that's an example, right? There is a strong economic need. The maturity in the industry, the number of players is still a handful, maybe 10, 15, 20, right? That's a great, time when you don't have 100 companies who are all mature or in degrees of maturity. You have a few players, great economic demand, and you come and bridge that demand supply gap, right? So need is acute, providers are less, right? That's a great timing to be. And I would say one slice of what I'm just picking from our deep tech report is satellites which enable downstream applications, right? Examples are Pixel, for example, or Galaxy, right? They are all serving very acute needs of the world, not only in India. And it's not that there are 20 such providers; there are few. So that's an example.
Any sectors or subsectors which people would not immediately think of when
Yeah.
one thinks about deep tech in India? Because I noticed you also have mentioned sectors like or subsectors like robotics. I mean, there is, of course, some work happening in India with robotics, and
I would, definitely want to speak about robotics. So there are 2, 3 factors here. I'll give an example, right, of our own portfolio company, which is Exponent Energy. Now, 2 years back, if I would go to the factory floor, I would see, and Exponent is into battery pack, specialized battery pack manufacturing and energy solutions, right? So they do 15-minute charging, which obviously one key component is the battery pack itself. And um, 2 years back, if I would visit the factory floor where the operations of Exponent Energy would happen, it would be several manual processes. Of course, there is automation, but there are also manual processes. The issue of manual processes is the accuracy, right? The repeatability, consistency in quality, right? So you would have yield losses, which can be a sizable part of your cost structure itself. If you go now, you would see uh, various robotics implementations in the factory, not to save on labor costs, right? Labor is still very affordable in India, but to improve yields, to improve accuracy, reliability, and so forth. And there is a direct big benefit on overall costs if you look at it, not just labor cost savings. I think this realization of use of robotics to improve yield, throughput, reliability is now being felt across the manufacturing sectors. And as the next generation of even the traditional business houses are thinking about how to redo the factory floor and go to the next level, everybody wants robotics. So this is one aspect that the benefits are clear and it is not labor arbitrage. The second is, and the fact that there is aspiration. The second is that um, all robotics largely is imported, right? You have these robotic arm companies, Fanuc, Kuka, etc. They are all imports. But can companies in India build these technologies or go beyond? Using software-defined robotics, basically a leapfrog opportunity is available right now. If you can do hardware and software together here and build new age robots, which are far more capable than what we are importing today and affordable as well, that can transform the manufacturing industry and take us directly to at par with the best in the world, right? That's the robotics opportunity, right? And that is just a slice. You take warehousing, different types of robots, and so on, and you will see, startup activity is very um, high in such sectors, right? So, the examples that I have taken are very anecdotal. But if you speak with aspirational, fast-growing factory owners or industry guys, you will find that all of them want to do this, right? It is their aspiration, right? As a business owner, that I need the best automation here, the best robotic implementation, so that the quality is great and throughput is high, scalability is provided for. All of these are materializing today. So it is underappreciated what's happening. It's like a subliminal kind of thing that is going on, and there is latent need here. So if some handful of startups can start pursuing this, I think it will be very beneficial for the overall manufacturing sector itself.
So the hardware versus software point is something that I'm always interested in when it comes to India. I mean, so far because of the IT services industry, it's all been building applications and so on. And in the startup world has also, correct me if I'm wrong, but largely work has been at the application level and not much further deeper than that. And but that seems to be changing now.
Yes.
So that's one point. I mean, if you want to talk about that a bit more. But what I started out asking you about was, as a deep tech investor, as well as in terms of TDK's philosophy of investing, how do you see hardware ventures versus software ventures? Is there a preference, or do you look at it simply from the point of view of the potential and promise, irrespective of hardware or software?
We have more affinity to hardware because eventually we would love to translate those learnings into uh, our product portfolio's evolution as well, and we go into hardware, right? But the exceptions would be software which enable hardware, right? Software which works in tandem with hardware and very intricately intertwined, right? For example, we made a software investment in a company called Glimpse. This company uses can give very rapid quality insights on cells which go into eventually go into battery packs through rapid imaging and analysis, right? This could be CT scan of a cell to understand is there any anomaly or not, but in real time, in microseconds, a very small time frame. So that's an example of a software which enables hardware quality, etc., and takes the overall hardware quality itself to the next level. So that's something that is very interesting for us. Right. We are looking at software which can define a robotic hardware, for example, physical intelligence related or physics simulation related domains are very interesting for us, right? These are softwares, but they will eventually define how hardware need to be built, which is largely, I think the trend is across industries, software defined hardware, right? So I think given this trend, that is, kind of our interest area on the software side.
Mm. Can you talk a bit more about TDK Ventures itself? Um, is this like a corporate venture arm? Therefore, you probably don't have LPs and investors like that. The money comes from the parent company. Is that correct? Or just explain this to us.
We have done both kind of. One, largely, you're right that this is a corporate venture arm of TDK Corporation, and and it is not balance sheet financing. The fund is structured as a fund, separate from the corporation, but source of money is of course TDK Corporation. The second is that we have done 4 funds. One of the funds is a multi-LP fund also, right?
Right.
Like-minded corporations getting together to create a fund. So we have done both, largely TDK Corporation alone, but we have also done a multi-LP fund, right? So that's how we are structured.
Overall, across the 4 funds now, how much money has been committed to startups? And I'm assuming that you invest out of a global corpus and not necessarily.
Yes. There's a global corpus, $500 million. So exactly 500 million is the assets under management for deployment.
So as we started out talking, I was saying how this year you probably expect, and going into next year, you expect to accelerate investments from TDK Ventures in India. Can you give us a sense of the kinds of conversations that's happening? I mean, the type of founders that you're encountering, the ideas that they're bringing to you. And because I'm obviously interested in how all of these are changing versus, say, 3 years ago or 5 years ago, in terms of originality of ideas. How deep is the deep science that they're actually bringing, to the table, when they want to build a startup around their know-how. Just want to get a sense of your experience so far.
I'm very pleasantly surprised at the ambition of deep tech founders and the kind of innovation that they are going after, which is second to none globally, right? There are practical realities, and this is one of the good points, I would say, and a differentiation between an Indian entrepreneur innovating in India versus entrepreneurs overseas in developed markets, right? In India, you don't have the luxury of, let's say, investing in R&D for 10 years in the hope of the product coming through and then commercializing, right? So the reality is that deep tech, yes, it takes longer than a usual startup, but you don't have the luxury, the kind of luxury that you would have in a developed market like the United States, right? And what does it do to the entrepreneurs? The entrepreneurs are more pragmatic. They are, of course, trying to do more with less. That has always been the case. But they're also looking at market validation for parts of their solutions early on, which actually improves the overall thinking and market readiness of the full solution when it comes, right? So there is a pragmatism that I see in deep tech founders. Innovation and ambition is second to none. I think that is one of the reasons that I completely believe that Indian startups, deep tech startups, will not only solve problems of India, but will definitely be globally competitive. And in our evaluation, this is one of the key criteria that whoever we partner with, would they stand firm in their product quality and innovation when stacked against the best of the best, right? So the recent investment that we made in Ultraviolet, they are already selling in Europe, which is the bastion of automotive, right? Innovation. And the market feedback is pretty good. So that's an example that the primary market is India. India is the biggest motorcycle market in the world, right? But can they stand the scrutiny of a very discerning customer in European market? Yeah, it's so. This is one of the main criteria for us as well when we assess a deep tech company in India and stack them against the best in the world.
Do you see evidence that um, deep tech in India is becoming closer to, or is getting closer to, or the same as what you would say deep tech in Silicon Valley? By this, I mean, in India, deep tech so far has been again applying some existing fundamental technology or core technology, even on the software side. For example, vibe coding is now all the rage, but the guy who invented it is not here.
Yes. Yeah.
Similarly, you have some really sophisticated drones and robots and so on in India in the warehouse automation, for example. But if you get right down to the sensors, it probably comes from Europe. And I mean, there are other examples. So, in that sense, do you see that in India also now there are entrepreneurs who want to uh, try and build those fundamental technologies?
There are but a few. We are very nascent as compared to the developed world's depth and maturity of the deep tech ecosystem. So, if I were to break it down into applications versus fundamental science, just translating to engineering, example sensors, new age sensors, etc., that is very early in India. And I would say that the gap is at two ends, or 2 points here. One is the university ecosystem itself, right? There is work going on to solve foundational problem, but it is very resource starved, and resources meaning both people and money, more money than people. The other is translational work from picking something from the lab and creating some end application out of it. That is also a gap. So you have one end of the spectrum, which is end application, which is, active. People are building. But if I look at foundational work, which largely stems from universities and so on, and then the translational work of science to engineering and creating an end product out of it. Those are weak areas for India right now. And there are many initiatives, etc., but I don't think so they are very effective to do this translational work of getting university incubators to come out and do end applications, right? So I think that should be the focus area of government. And I think all the right work is happening right now. You have more emphasis on um, a productivity measurement is based on what impact was finally achieved through research. We need to do more of that. We need to do more incubation, very early grant and grant funding, etc., so that before in companies incorporated and private money comes into the business, there is already some investment done upstream. Only then you will have a thriving deep tech ecosystem in India, right? And I think this is a natural progression, right? As soon as the country realizes that we can do sophisticated products, we can do deep tech end applications, the demand on university systems to do more upstream work will automatically happen, right? And I believe that if we keep on the momentum on deep tech and application building in India, 5-7 years, you will see the impact happening in universities who will also become very ambitious to contribute to this with upstream science and engineering.
Mm.
So that should happen.
Mm. You have a lot of global experience on how many different ecosystems function. And one thing I feel probably is less understood in India, and I was, as a reporter also, I only learned about this very, very recently, that in Silicon Valley, for example, and other such hubs as well, in the universities that feed into these hubs and so on, there seems to be like a very mature, incentive structure within the universities, within schools, that encourage master's level graduates as well as their professors to go after entrepreneurship. But in India, I don't think there are any formal incentive structures in place. Do you see that changing? I mean, are there conversations that you're coming across?
I think I am seeing a very refreshing change in this aspect in India. You're right that this is a difference between the developed deep tech ecosystems versus India. And this ties to the point of translating foundational science and engineering work to end application. The missing link is these champions of technology who want it to make a societal impact by translating whatever they discovered in the lab to end application. Only then the impact will be had. Otherwise, it would remain in the lab. But the refreshing change is that professors from these premium institutions like ISC, IIT, and so on are beginning to create companies. And there is flexibility for them to do so by taking sabbatical, or extended period of time, and so forth. And there is active encouragement through the incubation program. So if you go to IIT Madras, you will see a good chunk of startups who have been formed in the incubation center, which are led by professors, right? Similarly, in ISC, I met only yesterday the faculty-led startups, right? So I think it is beginning to happen. It was completely unheard of, actually, but over the last few years, and some of these startups have become successful, right? So it is in the public consciousness that, okay, you can actually see a professor use their learning and lab insights to actually make an impact to society, right? So if more and more of such things happen, Indians are entrepreneurial by nature. They want to do something, right? So it's a very vibrant young nation. So some role models, and you will see again the flywheel turning, right? So we need some of these role models to go all the way, create the company, build it, list it, make a name for themselves and benefit the society. If few of such examples happen over the 5-10 years, I think which will happen, you will have very good role models that will become symbolic of what needs to be there.
Mm. Um, if you wear your VC investor's hat, and can you just briefly talk about how the funding ecosystem is changing in India for deep tech?
I think there is a clear movement of or allocation to deep tech within funds. There are specialized deep tech funds, few. In absolute amount or percentage amount, the corpus might be less. Our report shows 7-8%. We believe it should go to 20% at steady state. Um, Even the large funds who were largely doing e-com, fintech, SaaS, etc., are creating larger allocations every year for deep tech. So I think the funding is moving towards deep tech, and successes like Ather, for example, right? Ather is a hardware product which is now growing really well. It has become public. Investors did get returns through that activity. So there is increased confidence that uh, uh, you know investing in such domains can also create outsized returns, and more and more opportunities are emerging which are attractive. So we see that funds are having either a dedicated fund for deep tech or increasing allocation of funds for deep.
Mm, fair enough. Uh, okay, I'm going to switch to asking you about your own journey, which has been fairly entrepreneurial in its own right. Uh, can you start by just giving us a quick snapshot from IT Bombay, chemical engineering graduate?
Yeah.
Uh, from there to VC, just walk us through some of the highlights, and then I have a few more questions.
Yeah, so was trained as an engineer. Always wanted to become an engineer from childhood. Had a fascination for physics and chemistry and mathematics and so on. So natural inclination, and fortunate enough to go to IIT Bombay. And I did some researchy activities in IIT Bombay also. Published 4 papers in peer-reviewed journals, all in undergrad. Um, and I was almost making up my mind to pursue a PhD, like was the convention. But I got a very good opportunity to become an application-oriented scientist in Procter and Gamble in their Japanese technical center in Kobe, which is what I eventually wanted to do. That take whatever we do in the lab to actual products, which goes into the retail shelves and eventually to the homes. So that was a great experience. From the get go, I was sure that I wanted to build something in India, do something in India. So, this was going to happen sooner than later. I decided to come back to India and, became venture investor in Venture East. I had a startup before that, right after coming back to India, but that didn't do well. It was a very bad timing for financing because the Lehman crisis had happened in 7-8. So I started investing to buy time to understand more about the domain of you learn a lot by working very closely with the startup founders. Was there for 5-6 years, doing investments mostly in med tech, clean tech, all technology oriented sectors. Very fascinating. I learned a lot then. And then eventually of course, I wanted to be an entrepreneur. So I took a jump and started a company along with one of my juniors from college. And also, we had an overlap with Procter and Gamble. He was doing Pringles, right? Very sophisticated technology goes in creating Pringles chips. And he has some patents on that also, right? So we started Gen Y Medium. And this was to work with new age players to create digital channels for revenue. And in that time frame, 13, 14, 15 time frame, is when e-com, Flipkarts and Paytms and all of that were taking off really rapidly. So we believe that this will be a need of the industry, and let's create technology platforms and know-how to do this better. So we started working with very good startups, almost all the well-known ones, and grew that business, and eventually professionalized that company, and we decided to pursue different things. So sold the company to Ola, who was one of our customers as well. Worked very closely with Bhavesh on new businesses that were being created as part of Ola Consumer. Ola Electric was just taking off, very initial days, and the AI and computing business, which is Krutrim. So worked actually in all these three companies in different capacities, all new businesses. That was what I really liked, creating new businesses, scaling them up, and so forth. So enjoyed this stint of being an operator for a long time across different technologies. So AI, SaaS, marketing tech, automotive, AI, and computing. So it's a mix of hodgepodge of various types of technology experiences. And then decided that I think one of the unique things that can be done is we need people who have operating experience, can work with much more talented, brighter technology entrepreneurs, right? If you can help in any way possible, whether as investor or advisor or whichever, it will do a lot of good to the deep tech community. And I was sold on this concept of deep tech, that I want to only be pursuing activity either as an entrepreneur or as an investor in the deep tech ecosystem, because that's what the country needs right now. It doesn't need another e-com company, right? At least the degree of intensity of need is more on deep tech. So, and therefore that brought me to TDK Ventures, where this is a catalyst to enable the deep tech ecosystem. So that's become the purpose of what I want to do in life.
The first startup that you said financing this stuff and it didn't work out, what was that about?
So this was a startup called training.com, which was a e-learning company, very similar to Upgrad and Coursera and so on, where we had e-learning material, very high quality, licensed directly from Cisco, Microsoft, etc., and imparting these training materials, pay as you go model. So it was ahead of its time, one factor, and also very bad timing, right? Timing is everything, and that was bad timing. Nobody could have predicted it, actually, right? And it was a B2C consumer play, right? So we were selling these courses on the portal to professionals. So you need a lot of marketing investment to do the customer acquisition and so on. So without money, it would be very, very unviable in that sense, right? As a startup. So that was what training.com was.
Hmm. What is your view on where AI fits into India's deep tech ecosystem? Do you see both standalone, really serious AI opportunities, or do you think for the foreseeable future it will be more about incorporating AI into other products and solutions?
I think we need both. We need foundational work in AI, in the absence of which we will compromise almost all deep tech sectors in India, because AI is changing the way things are done across industries. If you don't have foundational strength, that will have negative repercussions sooner than later. So there is a need to do foundational work, mathematics, the core AI development work, right? it is, and maybe it is a combination of academic institutions efforts, the government pumping in some money, and startups collaborating. I think that might be the ideal way to do this, because this is not um, a task which one startup can do end to end. It is very capital intensive, very a lot of planning needed. It's a Herculean effort, but it is required to be done, in my opinion. And of course, there is end application work where a lot of demand, not only India but globally, exists, and we should take full advantage of this, right? And we have to always see the balance here, right? We have to balance out the loss of employment that I can foresee AI causing, and how do you balance it out, right? Traditionally, what we have done is we have leapfrogged to the next level of skill, right? If it was BPO going to other countries, we had IT services, then more specialized knowledge services, and so on. But those changes happened over a period of time. Now the change is so rapid that we need rapid upskilling and promotion of people to uh, start building applications not only for India but for the world here, to balance this loss of employment opportunities, which I can clearly foresee that it will happen, right? So the government should, and individuals also, it is both, they should be on mission mode on this, right? That how do we reskill and uh, influence people to think about building AI applications and products, and doing more with the technology on mass scale. Um, and also at the same time, not just become end application creators, do foundational work, because the way in which it will impact all deep tech sectors. Semiconductor design today is being using AI, right? And that's a large portion of what semiconductor talent does in India, right? So that's found fundamentally changing. Robotics is AI software defined, right? So physical intelligence foundational models will define whether a robot is can do multiple tasks rather than a routine, very well defined task in an assembly line, right? All of these sectors are changing, and without a strong handle on foundational AI, we will miss that opportunity. So it's a very um, overwhelming situation. There's an opportunity, but it is also a major shift that is happening. So countries who play really well in such change moments of change, I can gain really well, right? And I hope that we do the right thing in this kind of changing time.
Mm. We spoke about robotics. Do you see anyone in India working on physical AI, even in academic circles?
Very less, actually, right? Very few. It's um, there was very little effort on the tech side also earlier, right? These foundational models, transformer based models, etc., that were happening. Very very few people were working in India on that, and that explains why we are kind of falling behind in this. And physical AI is requires even more resources, right? You need hardware, you need a lot more resources, etc. So, you know, I see very few in the academia. I have not heard of a lot of impactful work coming out of India. That you can see very clearly in the cited literature, etc. There's hardly anything, right? It's more reviews and review papers and a very early, early work versus deep work, right? And the fact is that even in the developed markets, because this is a Herculean effort which requires a lot of investment, most of this work is being done by the Googles, Meta, Microsofts of the world, because a small company or a nascent startup or a university will never be able to take a call that I will deploy $1 billion to solve this one problem, right? And now we are realizing that it is never $1 billion; it is multiple $1 billion, right? Every year. So only the very large corporations are actually driving the this movement ahead. The nature of the problem is such, right? And they will reap all the benefit that accrues, right? So that's I think all governments would be struggling with this fact that we can't deploy billions of dollars as an organized company can. So what do we do, right? So it's a food for thought. Actually, there are no right answers today, right? At least the larger corporations of India should make some very brave bets in this domain because it's not something that smaller companies can do. Smaller companies can focus on leapfrogging technologies like quantum and so on, optical computing, those kind of things, so that they can find newer ways to do it. So that is definitely one area. And that comes in the deep tech report because of this reason. But the larger corporations with balance sheet money, they need to do something.
Hmm. Hmm. Fair point. Okay, bringing it back to lessons from your own journey so far. Um, if you if you were talking to deep tech entrepreneurs who are potentially looking for funding from TDK or in general looking for funding, uh, what would you say should be their top takeaways, considerations? For example, is it important for them to have a lab to market vision right from the beginning, and maybe even more than a vision, at least an early plan? Uh, what would be some of your top sort of advice pointers to them?
I would, break it down into the strategy side and the behavioral side, right? Let's tackle the behavioral side first. There will be a deep tech founder should expect a long spell of no revenues coming in, which can be very unnerving versus other sectors where you have, let's say, smaller, but some revenue, some customer wins that are happening, which gives you the confidence and keep you going that, okay, I'll go from 1 to 10 to 100. Here you will remain at zero from the money flow side, the revenue side, for a longer span. So it can be very unnerving. So resilience, very mission oriented. It should be very purpose driven. Otherwise, you will always, you know, after a few years, those questions just overwhelm you. And I have seen deep tech founders leave the journey midway and move, right? So before taking the plunge, the expectation should be that we are ready to endure hardship for several more years. And these journeys are also very long. So you're writing, you are doing an undertaking for 15 years or more, right? And therefore, that call needs to be made very, very consciously and wisely. And on the strategy side, I would definitely not say that, definitely advise against building in vacuum. So I see, some founders who have great technology, but the end application, market maturity, where the demand will come, how the monetization will happen, is unclear, right? And this is after 3-4 years in their journey, right? That should not be the case because that is a recipe for disaster, right? Um, Definitely, you would not know all the detail of the market dynamics, but a rough sketch, a skeleton of a business plan should always be there. And you will see that that skeleton will keep on evolving every year because the nature of the competitive landscape and the dynamic keeps on changing. But there must be a baseline, right? Without a baseline, it is, I would say, very unwise to pursue something, right? That is the difference between a scientist and an entrepreneur, right? You have to behave like an entrepreneur from day one, right? And if the purpose is to make a impact over large population, large part of the population, you'll always be thinking of how to get the technology to the end user, right? And that is actually the business plan or the strategy, if we call it, right? So how do I take it from here to millions of people, if not billions of people, right? So that thought should be from day one, right? Otherwise, you don't have the right purpose and you're building in vacuum, which is not good.
That's it for today. You can get links to Ravi's bio and TDK Ventures in the show notes, wherever you get your podcasts. For my pick of daily headlines on deep tech and climate tech from India and around the world, please listen to my India Tech Report Daily Morning Brief. To support my work, please subscribe to my posts at indiatechreport.in if you'd like to get all these in one place. Until next time, I'm Hariharakli. Thank you for listening.